The prequels. I can't tell you how grateful I am for all the memes that have come out of them.
Hello there.
And, of course, there's everyone's favorite comic relief, Jar Jar Binks, who is by far the best character that's ever invented in the Star Wars universe. I think we can all agree on that one. But no, in all seriousness, that's not what I'm here to talk about today. No matter what your position is on the prequels, whether you love them, hate them, or somewhere in between, I think we can all look at the numbers and realize that they didn't hit nearly as well as they should have. Following the epic success of the original trilogy, I think in general the fandom expected something a little more grounded and serious, and instead we got, well, Jar Jar Binks, for better or for worse. However, if I were to point to one of my biggest problems with the prequel trilogy, it would largely be on the shoulders of Anakin Skywalker, played by Hayden Christensen. Again, let me be very, very, very clear. I am not here to hate on the prequels, as you can tell by the title of this video. In fact, I think there's a lot of merit to be had in them, even though I personally don't like them very much. So even if you love Anakin Skywalker, specifically the Hayden Christensen version, just know that he didn't work for me personally, as well as for a lot of people. I grew up in a world where the prequels had just come out, and so I grew up watching those films. Jar Jar Binks or Hayden Christensen, they really didn't bother me that much. You don't really pay attention to those kinds of things when you're younger. When we got to the year 2008, I was old enough to have loved Star Wars enough to go see the newly released Clone Wars film. Let me tell you, I was all in. I know that Clone Wars film is so heavily maligned by the Star Wars fandom, and in all fairness, I haven't seen it in over 10 years, but when it came out, I was all over the new show. Every Friday, I would wait and watch the new Clone Wars episode with such high anticipation it was insane. And to Dave Filoni's credit, after the bomb that was the feature-length film, and the backlash behind Ahsoka, he pulled off one of the greatest pieces of Star Wars anythings that we've seen in the last 50 years. As I watched the show and continued to see the characters progress, I realized now that one of the biggest reasons I fell in love with the show was because I loved the characters so much. They were likable, they were charismatic, they were charming. They had the bravado and the swagger that a Jedi Knight during the height of the Republic should have. Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi were back-to-back, mirroring each other's moves, throwing quips, and just being two of the coolest, most capable Jedis on the battlefield. And then, it hit me. You see, while Hayden Christensen's performance as Anakin Skywalker never resonated with me, as soon as I saw the Clone Wars, that version of the character became Anakin Skywalker to me. That was Anakin. Why is that? What made the animated version of Anakin so much more successful than the film version? Well, first of all, I want to be abundantly clear in that I'm not disparaging Hayden's performance at all. He is a good actor. If you watch the film Shattered Glass, which came out during the prequels, it got very good reviews. It has nothing to do with his acting abilities, and by all accounts, he's a great guy. I think it's in large part because of the dialogue. I dare you to get Leonardo DiCaprio or Daniel Day-Lewis to say these lines.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Because I don't think they could. Regardless of whose fault it is, I am left to rewatch the prequels and wish that Anakin Skywalker was different. The one in the films is constantly whining about how his life is unfair. He creeps out on Padme so much and she still falls in love with him, which is crazy to me. And he backtalks Obi-Wan so often, yet you're meant to believe that they're best friends. He turns to the dark side with almost no hesitation, and then you're left to wonder why he went from remorseful, doubtful Anakin Skywalker to child murderer Darth Vader. The Clone Wars version of Anakin fixes almost all of these problems. So I'm going to lay out the 4 main problems that this version of Anakin, voiced by Matt Lanter, manages to fix. The first is the romance. Now, look, I really do believe that a lot of the problems in the prequel trilogy belong to the dialogue. I did not buy Anakin willing to sell a soul to the literal devil because he loved a girl he basically spent an entire movie creeping out on. And on the flip side, this is perhaps one of the only points that I think could go either way for the Clone Wars. While I personally think it improved the relationship between Padme and Anakin, I can see how people would say that it really didn't do much for them. The show doesn't really spend a terribly large amount of time on the two, and either way, I don't think the Clone Wars does a whole lot with them anyways. However, I think that what the show does do in those little moments between the characters is flesh it out and make it much more realistic. The Clone Wars, having 7 seasons to do so, was able to take their relationship and expand upon it, showing just how Padme's role as a senator and Anakin's role as a Jedi truly came into conflict. And even in the dialogue, while it's not perfect and a little cheesy and kiddie at times, it still feels a lot more established and real, like a true husband and wife. The first season goes a long way to emphasize this by showing their relationship in the Malevolence arc, and it's clear just how much he cares about Padme, and not just that puppy dog affection, but actual genuine feelings for her. And it's also kind of clever how Obi-Wan is going after C-3PO at the same time so that they can attempt to stay hidden. And then, all the way in Season 7, when we get hints that she's pregnant and that Obi-Wan knows about their relationship, it just feels so much more natural. It doesn't feel as forced as Ewan McGregor saying, Anakin is the father, isn't he? Because that just felt so stale. Of course Obi-Wan would have known based on the way that they were acting towards each other. While that first point was perhaps not quite as impactful as the next three, this second point is something the Clone Wars did that really goes a long way for Anakin's character, and that is his turn to the dark side. Now, I don't know about you, but when I watched Revenge of the Sith and saw Anakin bowing to Palpatine and pledging himself to the dark side, I would have thought that the two very important thoughts that would have crossed his mind long before I'm joining you were, A, what happened to your face? And B, I just assisted in the murder of the second most powerful Jedi Master. What do I do? It just feels so rushed. All of a sudden, Anakin is like, oh, alright, you have answers, but we all know that he really doesn't, or he isn't going to share them with him. But, yeah, okay, I'll join you or whatever. And then he kills a bunch of children. Because reasons. Before any of you bring up the incidents with the Tusken Raiders or the killing of Count Dooku, I want to mention this. In my eyes, those were just moments of anger, the first being triggered by an extremely harrowing and traumatic event. Again, I'm not saying at all that anyone should or would resort to that sort of violence if they were provoked like that, but the bottom line is that we all have our own moments of anger as well. That's just part of being human. I don't think that necessarily constitutes going to the dark side. And then with the murder of Dooku, maybe it's Hayden Christensen's performance, but I just never really saw the anger in that moment. It was almost like, oh, my buddy Palps wants me to kill this guy that we've been hunting for a while. Alright, that's cool. The Anakin in the films almost displays a graph that spikes every so often, but generally remains level until it spikes for good one last time. The Anakin in Clone Wars displays a more gradual, steady curve with a couple spikes that flow along the trajectory that they set up, which is why it feels so much more natural. In Season 1, we see a generally jovial, swashbuckling kind of Anakin. He's just a cool character. However, in Season 7, we see an Anakin that's changed, and he straight up murders Admiral Trench saying, I don't have such weaknesses, when Trench begins to taunt him and call in the Jedi Code to save himself. How did we get here? Was this another spike? Well, no, it was actually in a long line of gradual spikes that began to inch upwards. We see in the Mortis Arc that Anakin is shown what he will become, and that really sets him off. While his memory does get wiped at the end, we do see a glimpse of the kinds of things that he will do. When Obi-Wan fakes his death, you can see just how unbelievably angry he is. It's not sudden, it's not loud like in the films. All you can see is a shot of him quietly standing, but the expression on his face says everything. And then in Season 5, when he's interrogating Barriss, you can really tell how angry he is. One of the best examples is actually the Clovis arc, which happens to tie the first 2 points together. Here you get to see how Anakin really cares about his wife, and also how the anger that is within this character is not just random, provoked, but rather deep-seated. Anakin lost his mother and was taken away from his home at a very young age, and that would have an impact on anybody. I think it makes it all the more powerful when you see all of it and just watch as Anakin learns what he's about to become in the Mortis Arc. The third thing that the Clone Wars fixed about Anakin is his friendship with Obi-Wan. This one's a personal favorite. It's one thing to write dialogue about Gundarks and Cato Nemoidia, and it's another to actually show that kind of camaraderie. It really wasn't enough to have Obi-Wan just allude to something else all the time that seemed so much cooler and seemed to hint at the fact that these two were great friends. You just don't see it in the films. You don't see the Jedi General who fought by Obi-Wan's side in the Clone War, as we hear in Episode 4. You just see a kid who's always trying to whine about his master. I absolutely love the exchange of dialogue that comes early on in the Clone Wars run, and I think it perfectly encapsulates just how close they are.
It was important for you to arrive without it, so your capture would be convincing.
Oh, they were convinced, all right. But how come I'm the one getting caught all the time? It doesn't look good.
When you're a Jedi Master, you can make the plan.
That's just it. How can I become a Jedi Master if I'm always getting caught?
At least you're a master at getting caught.
While Anakin may whine and complain, you can see exactly why Obi-Wan still cares deeply for this man. I think the expression on his face when he tells Ahsoka in Season 7 that Anakin has killed Dooku says it all. He's hurt, he's confused, and he's beginning to line up the pieces that we've all been seeing as an audience, and We've all lined up since the beginning that Anakin is starting to let go of that side of him. And again, going back to the scene where Obi-Wan fakes his death, when Anakin looks down into the coffin, you can viscerally feel his anger and sadness at the loss of not just his mentor, but his best friend. The fourth and final thing kind of wraps up the rest of them, but I think it's the most important, and it's his general persona. It may seem vague, but think about it like this. For most characters, you can kind of get a certain vibe from them. It's not an exact science, certainly not, but you're able to tell things from a character from just a few seconds with them on screen. For example, Obi-Wan is calm, cool, collected, and oftentimes quippy. Ahsoka is eager, overexcitable, and ready to learn. And Palpatine is cunning, he's slippery, but he's also charismatic and charming. So, what is Anakin? Well, in the films, I often just thought of him as a brat, because, again, I don't know if this was the script's fault or Christensen's delivery, but from "it's not fair" to "I hate them" or "I don't like sand," Anakin's always complaining. This isn't the chosen one. This is an entitled Padawan who believes he will be the chosen one rather than a Jedi Knight who has to carry the burden of bringing balance to the Force. I have to give a lot of credit to voice actor Matt Lanter. While all the voice actors sometimes lean into the more comically over-the-top deliveries of their lines to appeal to the younger audiences, there are some truly dark, serious moments, and Lanter delivers them so well. You can see it in the episode where Ahsoka is banished from the Jedi Temple, where she turns Anakin away and he says, "I understand more than you know." You can tell just how hurt he is and how he's legitimately trying to wrestle with the ideas of the Jedi Council, but also trying to stick up for them at the same time. I really do believe that this is 99% due to Matt Lanter. Whenever I hear the prequels and I hear Anakin speak, I subconsciously say to myself, that's Hayden Christensen, or that's George Lucas's script. But whenever I hear Lanter breathe life into the character, I immediately go, that is Anakin Skywalker. What this show has done in its run is what the prequels failed to do in my opinion. While the prequels were supposed to be about the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker as he descended into the darkness, they ended up being a series of moments strung together by words that were empty when it was all said and done. While you may not agree with me, which is absolutely fine, I stand by the fact that this version of Anakin Skywalker is the one that I always wanted to see if, in a hypothetical universe, the prequels were redone. The chosen one, who is tormented, fraught by anguish, confident, bitter, charismatic, and fiercely loyal to those he cares about. Now, before anyone comments about how I forgot to talk about Ahsoka, I just wanted to mention that I thought about adding her in because she really, really adds so many new and nuanced layers to Anakin Skywalker, in general. By that, I mean in terms of the Star Wars canon, she adds so many new depths to him, but if you rewatch Revenge of the Sith, it was clear that that version of Anakin Skywalker had no idea who Ahsoka was, and that George Lucas really didn't have the idea for her until after he finished the prequels. So in hindsight, yes, she really added more to the character in Revenge of the Sith. At the same time, it wasn't necessarily an improvement more than an addition that really wasn't visible in that film. Thanks for watching this video. I'd love to know your thoughts on the prequels and the Clone Wars. And if you prefer Hayden Christensen, I'd love to know your thoughts and reasons. Disagreement can lead to some great conversations. If you want to see more video essays like this, please hit the subscribe button and give the video a like, and let me know in the comments down below. Check out the links in the description for more of my content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.